The Empire was always searching for new worlds. Their fleets moved across the stars like shadows, spreading fear wherever they went. Most planets they found were weak, unprepared, and easy to control. For the Empire, it was routine: arrive, demand surrender, and take everything. But one day, the scanners of an Imperial scout ship detected something unusual at the edge of a quiet star system. It was a blue planet, shining like a jewel against the black of space. The reports came back quickly. The planet had water, air, life, and millions of cities. To the Empire's commanders, it looked like the perfect target. "Another easy conquest," one of the officers said with a smile. "We will add it to the Empire before the next cycle ends." The decision was made in moments. A fleet was sent to this strange new world. They expected no challenge. But something about the readings made the senior officers pause. The scans were not normal. The planet's surface seemed ordinary at first, but the deeper the scanners went, the stranger the signals became. Metallic echoes came from beneath the ground, massive structures hidden under layers of rock and ocean. The size of the objects made no sense. They were too big to be buildings, too organized to be natural. The computers could not explain them. Some of the younger officers joked that maybe the planet itself was alive. But no one laughed for long. The Empire had seen many civilizations, but never something like this. Still, arrogance pushed them forward. To the Empire, fear was for the weak. They told themselves that this world was nothing more than another prize. Yet deep inside there was unease. As the fleet drew closer, the commanders studied the images of the planet. It was called Earth. From space, it looked calm, peaceful, even fragile. Clouds drifted across blue oceans. Continents stretched out, green and gold under the sunlight. It looked like a world that could never resist the might of the Empire. But the strange signals from below refused to go away. The deeper they scanned, the stronger the signals became. Some of the machines even began to fail, overloaded by the strange energy patterns coming from the planet. Engineers worked to reset the systems, but they whispered quietly to each other. "This is not normal," one of them muttered. "This planet is hiding something." The commander of the fleet silenced the talk. He declared that Earth would fall like all the others. His voice was firm, but in his eyes there was doubt. That night, as the fleet drifted closer in silent formation, the crew members could not sleep. They stared at the planet through the observation windows. It felt as if Earth itself was watching them back. As the first Imperial ships entered orbit, the silence was heavy. No response came from the planet. No weapons fired. No fleets rose to meet them. It was as if Earth was asleep, ignoring the Empire's presence. "Perhaps they do not even have space travel," one officer suggested. "They must be primitive. This will be simple." The words gave the crew some comfort, but the scanners disagreed. Buried beneath the oceans, mountains and deserts were enormous shapes that no one could explain. They were too perfect, too symmetrical. They looked like machines. The crew sent the data to the central command ship. The room fell silent as the images came on the screen. Vast tunnels stretched like veins under the continents. Enormous chambers glowed with hidden energy. Something vast was buried in the planet's core. "It cannot be natural," whispered one of the science officers. "It was built." The commander frowned, but said nothing. He did not want to admit what his mind was already telling him. Earth was not just a planet. It was something else, something far more dangerous. The Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds, but none had ever looked like this. Still, pride would not allow retreat. The fleet tightened its orbit. A signal was prepared, demanding Earth's surrender. The message was sent out in a powerful voice. "This world belongs to the Empire. Submit or be destroyed." The words echoed across the void, carried by machines to the surface below. But Earth gave no answer. The silence was worse than any threat. It was not fear nor weakness. It was the silence of something waiting, something patient. The crew grew restless. "Why do they not answer?" one asked. Do they not understand?" Another shook his head. "Perhaps they understand too well." As the fleet circled the planet, the scanners flared again. This time the readings were stronger, so strong that alarms rang across the ships. Something beneath the surface was moving. Entire continents seemed to shift. Oceans trembled. The energy signals spiked higher and higher, as if the planet itself had awakened. The commander stared at the screen in disbelief. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "What is this place?" No one could answer him, but every heart in the fleet felt the same fear. Earth was not what it seemed, and whatever was hidden below was stirring. The Empire had come looking for another weak world. Instead, they had found something that should not exist. The Empire's fleet hung in Earth's orbit like a dark storm waiting to break. Hundreds of warships, each armed with weapons powerful enough to shatter moons, circled above the planet. From the command ship, the Emperor's chosen commander watched the blue world with cold eyes. He expected fear, surrender, or at least a cry for mercy. But Earth remained silent. Hours passed. The fleet sent message after message, each one stronger, louder, more demanding. Surrender your planet. Submit to the Empire. Your lives will be spared if you kneel. Still, Earth gave no reply. No fleet rose to meet them. No defenses fired. From space, the planet looked almost too quiet, as if nothing lived there at all. But the scans told another story. Strange energy fields pulsed beneath the ground. Massive shapes, larger than mountains, shifted in the shadows of the oceans and the continents. The Empire's officers tried to explain it away. Some said it was a mistake in the sensors. Others claimed it was just natural geological movement. Yet none of them truly believed it. The unease in their voices betrayed their fear. The commander ordered his ships closer. Fighters were sent down to the atmosphere. They flew over cities, oceans, and mountains. What they saw confused them. The planet was full of life, billions of humans, machines, lights, and structures spread across the continents. But none of them acted like a world under threat. There was no panic, no fleeing crowds, no global chaos. The people moved about their lives calmly, as if the Empire's fleet was invisible. "They don't fear us," one pilot whispered through the comms. "They act as if we are nothing." The commander grew angry. No world had ever ignored the Empire in this way. He gave a final order, one last warning before the attack. The message was broadcast across every channel, in every frequency. "This is the Empire. We are above your skies. Kneel or be destroyed." The words shook the stars, but still Earth remained silent. The silence was maddening. On the bridge of the command ship, tension filled the air. Officers exchanged uneasy glances. Some of them felt it in their bones, the sense that the planet was not weak, not helpless, but watching and waiting. Then the alarm sounded. The scanners lit up with impossible readings. Massive energy surges erupted from beneath the surface. The oceans boiled as giant structures shifted deep below. Mountains trembled as hidden mechanisms awoke after centuries of silence. Across the continents, faint rumbles shook the ground. Earth was no longer silent. It was moving. The pilots flying in the skies reported strange vibrations in the air, like waves of unseen power passing through them. Instruments went wild. Some ships lost control for seconds before stabilizing again. "The planet is alive," one of the pilots gasped. The commander refused to believe it, yet he could not deny what the scanners displayed. Beneath the surface of Earth lay vast networks of machinery, stretching across the entire globe. It was not a natural world. It was a weapon, a construct, a war machine disguised as a living planet. The Empire had thought it was conquering a weak world, but instead they had stepped into the jaws of something ancient and prepared. The commander tried to keep his voice calm as he gave the next order. "Fire a warning shot. Show them our strength." A warship obeyed. A beam of destructive energy, powerful enough to burn a continent, shot down toward an empty desert. But before it could land, something extraordinary happened. The ground itself opened, and a massive shield of pure energy rose from the planet's surface. The beam struck the shield and dissolved like water against stone. The entire fleet went silent. Nothing in the galaxy had ever blocked an Imperial weapon before. "Impossible," an officer whispered. Nothing can withstand that firepower. The commander's face grew pale. He ordered a second strike, stronger, from 3 ships at once. Again, the planet responded. This time, enormous towers rose from the oceans, breaking through waves like steel mountains. The towers glowed with light, and in an instant they fired beams of their own. The Imperial ships that fired were struck down, their hulls torn apart like paper. The wreckage fell burning into the atmosphere. Panic spread through the fleet. The Empire's soldiers, trained to be fearless, now felt terror claw at their hearts. The commander shouted for control, but even his voice shook. This planet dares to strike the Empire. Yet inside, he already knew the truth. This was no simple planet. This was a trap. Earth had been waiting for them. The silence was no weakness. It had been a warning. Now the Empire was no longer the hunter. They were the prey. And the war they thought would last hours was about to become something far greater, something that could change the galaxy forever. The Empire's fleet was in chaos. Alarms screamed on every ship as the strange power from Earth rose higher and higher, flooding the scanners with impossible readings. The commander tried to restore order, shouting commands, but fear had already spread through the ranks. They had expected a weak planet, defenseless and primitive, yet what they faced was something beyond their understanding. Across the planet's surface, strange events unfolded. The oceans churned as massive structures rose from the deep, shaped like towers of steel and light, each 1 mile high. Mountains split open, revealing glowing machinery hidden beneath rock for ages. From deserts and valleys, enormous panels slid upward, locking together until they formed colossal plates of armor that shimmered with energy. The entire world was changing before their eyes. Earth was awakening. The pilots flying in the atmosphere watched in horror as entire cities lit up with synchronized pulses of light. Highways glowed, rivers flashed with strange patterns, and the very sky seemed to vibrate with a hum that no one could explain. One pilot screamed through the comms that the ground itself was moving, shifting into patterns far too precise to be natural. Others reported that their navigation systems were failing, disrupted by a global energy field that wrapped around the entire planet like a shield. The commander demanded answers from the science officers, but their voices cracked with panic. "This is not possible," one said. "The whole planet, it is a machine." The words silenced the bridge. For a moment, even the alarms seemed to fade as the truth sank in. Earth was not just a world with defenses. The planet itself had been built for war. The commander refused to accept it. Pride and fear battled inside him. He ordered the fleet to open fire, to bring down the structures rising from the oceans. A dozen warships unleashed their cannons, raining destruction upon the planet. But once again, Earth responded. Gigantic shields, glowing with energy brighter than the stars, rose from the ground and absorbed the assault. The weapons of the Empire, weapons that had crushed countless civilizations, had no effect. The commander clenched his fists in rage. He shouted for all ships to fire, to burn the planet until nothing remained. Hundreds of beams, torpedoes, and missiles fell upon Earth. But instead of breaking, Earth fought back. The towers that had risen from the oceans turned, and with a single pulse they unleashed beams of devastating energy into the sky. Entire Imperial warships exploded, torn apart before their crews could even scream. The survivors watched in disbelief as the fleet that had once seemed invincible was reduced to wreckage in moments. Panic spread like fire. Officers shouted over each other, pilots begged for orders, and the crew's fear grew louder than the commander's voice. In desperation, he called for the fleet to retreat, but it was already too late. The planet was awake now, and it would not let them go easily. Deep below the surface, hidden chambers opened for the first time in millennia. Massive gears turned, colossal engines roared, and rivers of energy lit up the underground networks. The entire Earth trembled, not in weakness, but in power. The ground split open in fiery lines that stretched across continents, as if the planet's skin could no longer hide what lay beneath. Cities shook, but the humans did not panic. They did not flee. Instead, they stood calm, looking up at the sky as the Empire's ships burned. It was as if they had been waiting for this moment. The commander watched them from orbit, his face pale. He realized the truth that none of his soldiers wanted to admit. The humans had always known the Empire would come. They had been preparing for centuries, building their planet into a fortress unlike anything in the galaxy. Earth was not prey. Earth was a trap. The commander's mind raced. If this was true, then every victory the Empire had ever claimed meant nothing. They had thought themselves unstoppable, but in reality, they had only ruled because they had never faced Earth. Now that day had come, and the Empire's glory was crumbling. One officer dared to speak, his voice trembling. "We should withdraw, Commander. This planet is beyond us." The commander's pride flared, but his fear was stronger. He knew the officer was right. Yet even as he considered escape, Earth struck again. From the atmosphere itself, vast storms of energy burst outward, disabling engines and tearing smaller ships apart. The fleet was trapped. The commander stared at the blue world, his heart heavy with dread. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless. This was no ordinary battle. This was the awakening of something ancient, something greater than the Empire. Earth had revealed its true face, and it was a face of war. The silence that had once mocked them was gone, replaced by the thunder of a planet-sized machine preparing for total destruction. The Empire had discovered Earth, but they had also awakened a force that might one day decide the fate of the galaxy. The Empire had never faced fear like this before. Their fleets had crushed thousands of worlds, silenced billions of voices, and spread their shadow across half the galaxy. But now, above Earth, they were not the hunters, they were the hunted. The planet had awakened, its hidden war machine roaring to life, and the Empire's soldiers realized too late that they had walked into a battle they could not win. The commander stood rigid on the bridge of the flagship, his hands gripping the console as if he could force the chaos under control. "All ships," he ordered, "attack with full power. Overwhelm them before it's too late." His voice carried strength, but his eyes betrayed fear. Across the fleet, hundreds of ships obeyed. They unleashed everything they had: beams of plasma that could pierce moons, missiles that burned brighter than suns, cannons that shook the void with each blast. The sky around Earth became a storm of fire and destruction. But Earth answered. The towers that had risen from the oceans pulsed with light, sending arcs of energy through the atmosphere. Shields spread across entire continents, shimmering like walls of crystal. The Empire's attacks struck and scattered, powerless against defenses larger than anything they had ever seen. Then came Earth's counterattack. From the towers, beams of white-hot energy ripped upward into the sky, faster and sharper than lightning. Imperial cruisers exploded one after another, their fragments burning as they fell into the blue atmosphere. Entire squadrons of fighters vanished in seconds. The battlefield became a graveyard of fire. The soldiers on the Imperial ships felt terror like never before. They shouted warnings, cried for orders, cursed their fate, but the enemy they faced was not like the enemies of the past. This was not a fleet. This was not a city. This was a world that fought as one. The commander ordered a new tactic, a concentrated strike at a single point of Earth's defenses. "Focus all fire on that tower," he shouted, pointing to the largest structure in the ocean, a glowing colossus that seemed to command the others. Dozens of warships obeyed, unleashing their combined might on the target. For a moment, it seemed to work. The tower shook under the assault, its shields flaring brighter and brighter. Some officers dared to hope it would fall, but then the ocean erupted around it. More towers rose, breaking the waves like titans rising from the deep. They formed a circle, linked by beams of energy, and together they absorbed the firepower as if it were nothing. Then they fired back. A storm of beams and pulses tore through the Imperial formation. Ships burst apart in brilliant explosions, their screams silenced by the void. The commander's heart sank as he watched his proud fleet being destroyed piece by piece. Desperation clawed at him. He ordered the dreadnoughts, the Empire's most powerful war machines, into action. Massive ships the size of cities moved forward, their weapons glowing with deadly power. If anything can bring this world down, it is them, the commander declared. The dreadnoughts opened fire, unleashing weapons that had ended civilizations in minutes. The blasts carved through space, striking Earth's shields with all the fury the Empire could summon. For a moment, the sky itself seemed to break under the power. But Earth did not fall. Instead, the planet adapted. The shields bent, reshaped, and grew stronger. The ground shook, and from the continents themselves rose new structures, machines the size of mountains, each armed with cannons larger than entire ships. The dreadnoughts were mighty, but Earth's machine was mightier. One by one, the planet-sized weapons opened fire. Beams of energy sliced through the dreadnoughts' armor, splitting them in half. Explosions filled the void as the Empire's greatest pride was torn apart like paper. The soldiers watching screamed in disbelief. The invincible had been defeated. The commander's rage turned to despair. He realized the truth. The Empire was not fighting a planet. They were fighting something older, something designed to face invaders exactly like them. Earth had been waiting, silent and patient, for this day. And now the day had come. The clash raged on, but the outcome was no longer in question. Imperial ships tried to scatter, to escape the storm, but the planet's weapons followed them. No matter where they fled, beams of light hunted them down. The battlefield was littered with burning wreckage, the screams of soldiers echoing across the comms before being silenced forever. The commander looked at the faces of his officers. They were broken, their pride shattered, their fear plain. He wanted to believe there was still hope, but deep inside he knew the truth. The Empire had met its match. This was the first clash, and it was only the beginning. Earth was awake, and the galaxy would never be the same. The battlefield burned with the wreckage of Imperial ships, their broken hulls falling into the atmosphere like meteors. The Empire had unleashed its fury, yet Earth stood unshaken, its shields glowing brighter with every attack. On the flagship, silence filled the bridge as the commander watched his proud fleet crumble. He could not understand how a single world could resist the full power of the Empire. No civilization had ever stood against them. And yet, here it was. Earth, a planet that should have been weak, had revealed itself as a war machine beyond comprehension. The commander's thoughts raced, but before he could speak, a new signal appeared on the comms. It was not the usual static or coded messages of battle. This was a voice, calm, steady, and terrifying in its confidence. "You came here expecting conquest," the voice said. "You came believing we were weak, but we have been waiting for you." The officers froze. Every word echoed across the command decks of the surviving ships. The commander's eyes narrowed. "Who speaks?" he demanded. The voice replied without hesitation. "We are humanity, and this is our home. Earth is not prey. Earth is a warning." The words sent a chill through the fleet. For the first time in history, the Empire was being spoken to as equals, or worse, as intruders. The humans were not pleading for mercy, nor were they begging for survival. They spoke with the authority of those who knew they held the power. The commander tried to answer, his pride pushing him to defy the message. "You face the Empire," he declared. "We rule the stars. Surrender now, or we will destroy you." The voice only laughed softly, a sound that carried more threat than anger. "Destroy us? You have already tried. Your weapons break against our shields. Your ships fall like ash. And yet we have only awakened a fraction of our strength. Do you still believe you hold the power?" The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Doubt spread like poison. They had seen their strongest dreadnoughts fall. They had watched their fleet be torn apart. And now this human voice spoke as if everything had been planned, as if Earth had always known this day would come. The commander struggled to hold control. "You cannot fight the Empire," he said firmly, though his voice wavered. "We are endless. Our fleets stretch across the galaxy. If you resist, more will come. You cannot stop us all." The voice was calm. "Perhaps. But how many fleets will fall before you learn the truth? How many lives will you waste trying to conquer a world that was never meant to be conquered? We have seen empires rise and fall. We knew one day yours would come, and so we prepared. For centuries we built this planet not as a home, but as a fortress. Every mountain hides a weapon. Every ocean shields a machine. Every city you see is only a mask. This world was designed to fight back against those who would try to rule it. The commander felt the weight of the words pressing down on him. He wanted to deny it, to call it a lie, but the evidence was burning before his eyes. His fleet, once invincible, was shattered. His soldiers, once fearless, now trembled. And the humans, these people he had thought to be primitive, were revealing themselves as the architects of a weapon beyond imagination. On Earth's surface, the humans stood tall. In the cities, millions of eyes turned to the skies, watching the Empire's ships burn. They did not cower, did not panic. They only watched, calm and unbroken. It was as if they knew they were safe, as if they trusted the power of the planet they lived upon. For the Empire's soldiers, the sight was unbearable. They had always been feared. To see an entire species look upon them without fear was worse than any weapon. It was humiliation. The voice returned once more, steady and final. We are humanity. We are not your slaves. We are not your conquest. Leave now, or this fleet will be destroyed as easily as the ones before it. And know this, if you return, we will be waiting. The galaxy may fear you, but Earth does not. The commander stood frozen, his fists clenched, his pride in ruins. He wanted to order another attack, to prove the humans wrong, but inside he knew it was hopeless. The truth was carved into the wreckage floating around him. The Empire had met an enemy it could not defeat. Still, pride fought against reason. Could he retreat? Could he allow the Empire's first defeat to stain its legend? His thoughts burned, but the voice of humanity echoed in his mind like thunder. This was no ordinary battle. This was a revelation of a power the galaxy had forgotten, or perhaps never known. Humanity was no longer silent. They had spoken, and their words carried the weight of a world that had prepared for war since the dawn of time. The commander looked once more at the blue planet below. It looked so peaceful, so fragile from space. Yet he now knew the truth. Behind that beauty lay a war machine greater than anything the Empire had ever faced. And behind that machine stood a species that refused to bow. The commander of the Imperial fleet stood in silence as Earth's voice faded from the comms. Around him, the bridge was heavy with fear, the officers unable to meet his eyes. The Empire had faced resistance before, but never like this. Every strategy, every weapon, every formation that had once brought them victory had failed. Yet surrender was unthinkable. The Empire was built on power, and power demanded that they never yield. The commander knew he had only one choice left. He turned to his officers, his voice steady but cold. We will unleash everything. Every weapon, every ship, every soldier. If this planet wants war, we will give it. His words sparked a fragile hope in the crew, for they clung to the belief that the full might of the fleet could still prevail. Across the sky above Earth, the order spread. Engines roared as the Empire prepared for its greatest assault. Massive dreadnoughts moved forward, their weapons charging with deadly power. Swarms of fighters launched like dark clouds, blotting out the stars. The commander's plan was simple: overwhelm Earth with such force that no shield could withstand it. For a moment, the Empire felt like itself again, confident in its endless strength. The assault began. The sky lit up with fire as thousands of beams and missiles rained down on the planet. The air trembled as the weapons of the fleet unleashed a storm meant to break worlds. The commanders shouted triumphantly, believing the end was near. But then Earth responded. The planet's shields flared to life, brighter and stronger than ever before. The towers that rose from the oceans glowed with white fire, and the ground itself shifted as massive weapons emerged from the continents. Entire mountains unfolded into cannons. Valleys split open into launch sites, and cities transformed into engines of war. The planet was alive with power, its war machine adapting to every strike. Earth had been waiting for this moment. The Empire's fury was met with equal strength, and the battlefield became a storm of destruction. Fighters were torn from the sky by beams faster than lightning. Dreadnoughts were pierced by cannons the size of mountains. The weapons of the fleet that had once inspired fear across the stars now seemed small, fragile, and powerless. The commander clenched his fists as his flagship shook under the counterattack. He demanded reports, but all he heard were screams of ships destroyed, squadrons lost, entire divisions wiped out in seconds. The tide had turned, and the Empire was no longer in control. It was Earth that dictated the battle now. On the surface, the humans watched from their cities, calm and unbroken. They did not cheer, nor did they weep. They only stood together, as if united by something greater than fear or pride. They knew this was the moment they had prepared for, the moment their world was built to face. Humanity's silence spoke louder than any words, and it unsettled the Empire even more than the planet's weapons. The commander realized with horror that every move his fleet made, Earth countered perfectly. It was as if the planet had studied the Empire, had learned its tactics long before they arrived. He wondered if perhaps this was true, that humanity had always known of the Empire's rise and had designed their world to resist it. If that was the case, then nothing he did would succeed. Still, he refused to admit defeat. Pride was all he had left. "Press forward," he shouted. "If we fall fighting." His fleet obeyed, but their courage was hollow. One by one, ships fell into fire. The commander's great armada, the pride of the Empire, was being erased before his eyes. The Empire had thought itself endless, invincible, eternal, but now it was bleeding. And in that blood the truth was revealed. They were not gods of the galaxy. They were only another force that could be broken. The humans had proven it. The turning point had come. The Empire could not deny it. They had lost the advantage, and nothing would bring it back. As the flagship shook again under another strike, the commander looked upon Earth with both hatred and awe. He had wanted to crush this world, but now he understood. This was not simply a battle for a planet. This was the beginning of something larger. Humanity had shown the galaxy that the Empire could bleed, and once that truth spread, nothing would ever be the same again. The battlefield above Earth had become a graveyard. The wreckage of Imperial warships drifted through the void, their broken remains glowing as they fell into the blue atmosphere. Fires still burned in the skies where mighty dreadnoughts had once stood. The Empire's greatest fleet, the pride of countless conquests, was now reduced to ashes. On the flagship, the commander stood silent, his face pale as he watched the destruction unfold. His soldiers no longer looked to him for strength. They stared at their consoles in silence, their hands shaking, their eyes filled with despair. The Empire had never known defeat, yet here it was, undeniable and absolute. For the first time in his life, the commander felt powerless. He wanted to order another attack, to strike again in blind rage, but there was nothing left to give. His fleet was broken, and his pride was shattered. Then the voice of humanity returned, calm and steady, carrying across every surviving channel. "It is over. Your fleet is finished. You came seeking conquest, but you have only found ruin. Leave this world and carry our warning with you." The commander clenched his fists. Every word was a wound to his pride. He had sworn to serve the Empire with strength and victory, not retreat and humiliation. Yet even as anger burned inside him, he could not deny the truth. Earth had defeated them. There was no path to victory, no weapon strong enough to overcome the planet-sized war machine below. The voice continued, unwavering. "You are not the first invaders we have prepared for, and you will not be the last. We have watched the galaxy from the shadows, and we have learned. Every empire believes itself eternal. Every empire believes it cannot fall. But we know better. We have built this world to endure, to resist, and to survive when others collapse. Remember this day, for it is the day the Empire bled." The words echoed in the minds of every surviving soldier. They were not just a warning, but a truth that could not be silenced. The commander knew that if even one ship returned to Imperial space, the story would spread. The myth of the Empire's invincibility would be broken forever. He thought of the Emperor, of the punishment that would await him if he returned in defeat. Yet even that fear seemed small compared to the terror of Earth's power. His pride screamed for vengeance, but reason whispered the truth. Survival was the only choice. Slowly, with a voice heavy with shame, the commander gave the order. All remaining ships retreat. The words felt like poison, but they were the only words left to speak. Across the battered fleet, engines roared weakly as the survivors turned away from Earth. Wounded ships limped into formation, their lights flickering, their crews broken. They had come as conquerors, but they left as fugitives. Humanity watched from below, silent and unbroken. They did not cheer, did not celebrate. They simply stood together, their eyes fixed on the sky, as if reminding the Empire that they would always be ready. On the surface, the great towers that had risen from oceans and mountains began to sink once more, disappearing beneath waves and stone. The glowing shields dimmed, and the planet grew quiet again. Earth returned to its mask of peace, hiding the truth of the war machine beneath. It was as if the battle had never happened, as if the planet had gone back to sleep. Yet the Empire would never forget. The commander sat in his chair, his shoulders heavy with defeat. He stared at the shrinking image of Earth on the screen, his mind torn between fury and fear. He wanted to believe the Empire could return with greater force, with endless fleets, but in his heart he knew the outcome would always be the same. Earth had not shown its full strength. It had only revealed enough to warn them, and that warning would haunt the Empire forever. As the fleet entered the darkness of space, the commander whispered to himself words he would never admit aloud. We should never have come here. Behind him, Earth continued to shine like a jewel in the void, calm and beautiful, hiding its true nature from the galaxy once more. To outsiders, it looked like a fragile blue world, but the Empire now knew the truth. It was a fortress. It was a trap. It was a planet-sized war machine built by a species that refused to bow. And though the Empire had survived this encounter, the memory of Earth's power would spread like fire. The galaxy would hear the story. Other empires, other civilizations, would learn that the mighty could fall, that the rulers of stars were not untouchable. And in that truth, change would begin. The commander closed his eyes, torn between shame and dread, for he knew the greatest danger was not the fleet Earth had destroyed, but the idea Earth had unleashed. The idea that humanity was strong enough to resist the strongest empire in the galaxy. The final decision had been made, and it belonged not to the Empire, but to Earth. Humanity had chosen to let them live, to let them flee, but the message was clear. If they ever returned, Earth would be waiting.